Hey, Tom, how are you? I got you.
I'm great, thanks so much for being with us. Igor Volsky is the founder and executive director of Guns Down America, a bolder, broader movement calling for dramatically fewer guns in America. GunsDownAmerica.org is the website, and of course you can tweet him at GunsDownAmerica or at IGORVOLSKY, Igor Volsky. Igor, tell us about your organization.
Well, the organization is really focused on doing two different things that I think are really way overdue here in America. One is to financially drain the gun industry and the NRA. And the second is to organize Americans around bolder solutions that will actually reduce gun violence. And these are things like federal licensing for firearm owners, gun registration, gun buybacks. Because, Tom, we're in a country where, believe it or not, we now have more guns than people.
Right.
And if you look at all of the research out there, the fact of the matter is the more guns you have, the more public mass shootings, the more homicides, the more suicides, the more police shootings you have. And so, I think we've reached a point where background checks aren't enough. We really have to pursue policies that lead us towards the future with fewer guns and make those guns significantly harder to get.
Yeah, amen. And in fact, it is just simple math. You can do this on a state-by-state basis or a country-by-country basis, and various research organizations have done both. You could, basically, the more guns you have, the more gun violence you have, period. End of discussion. And, in fact, in the United States, states that have the most rigid gun control laws have literally half the number of gun deaths of all kinds, whether it's kids shooting each other, accidentally, or whether it's people committing suicide with guns or just naked homicides. Half the rate of states that that have very lenient gun laws, like Texas. So, I mean, this is simple math. Igor, I have a book coming out in June of next year. It's titled The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. And so I've been up to my eyeballs in this topic for the last year writing this book. And it seems to me like some just simple, straightforward stuff that shouldn't even be controversial might go a long way. The first is treating guns like cars. Back in the 1900s and the 19-teens, when cars started becoming so common that they started killing people, mostly by accident, we came up with, and ultimately over the next 40 years, this three-part system. Number one, there's a number, the VIN number, serial number that follows it from the time it's manufactured until the time it's destroyed. And every year, your ownership of that has to be renewed or asserted to the state. Number two, you have to prove that you know how to use it, a driver's license. You should prove that you know gun safety and guns. Number three, liability insurance. I think it's crazy that the kids in Newtown, if they had been hit by a drunk driver, even a malicious drunk driver who wanted to kill them, Geico would have paid each one of their families $1 million. But because they were shot with a gun, they got nothing. And that's one of these kind of free market solutions, as it were, that you can sell to Republicans, because then the insurance companies are evaluating the risk of people and setting the prices. Oh, you've got a domestic abuse charge on your record. Your insurance, instead of being $35 a year, is going to be $3,500 a year or $5,000 a year. What do you think?
First of all, I love that you have a book coming out about this in June, because I have a book coming out about this in April, where I talk about this very idea of requiring gun owners to have liability insurance. And I write about it in just the way you described, but also point out that the other place where the money can go for these gun owners is into survivor funds, into victim funds, because as we know, survivors of these public mass shootings, and we have the most in America, in the world, as you know, often spend a lifetime in pain and a lifetime in medical bills. And so not only do you want to get insurers on your side in terms of figuring out how to keep how to better ensure that guns are safely stored, and figuring out based on claims data which is what are best practices. But you also want to think about how can you use that that pot of money wisely to help different kind, to help people who are suffering from this, really.
Yeah.
And then, the other point you make, which I think is a good one about cars, is really, I think, also instructive in how we should deal with guns. Because with cars, we were of the mind that you have to make cars safer, you have to make roads safer, and that's how you save lives. But it's not enough to go to kind of individual drivers and try to change their individual behaviors, but that is harder to do than to change the tools they have, right? The cars, the roads. And when it comes to guns, it's kind of shameful, I think, that lawmakers from both sides of the aisle haven't really adopted this approach, and that we're in a country where the gun industry and the products they make are almost entirely unregulated. So, aspirin and teddy bears and whatever else consumer product is reviewed by, the Consumer Safety Commission, for instance. The same thing is not true for guns, which is why over the last 10, 20 years, you've had gun manufacturers making weapons that are deadlier, that are specifically designed to kill people quickly and efficiently. And so if 10, 20 years ago, you wouldn't die from a gunshot wound that came out of a revolver. Today, because the weapons are so much more advanced and are based on the stuff our military uses, people die a lot faster, and of course doctors know this firsthand. So the idea of regulating the gun industry is a really big key to solving this problem.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Another point that I think we should start a conversation about, if you go back and watch, cop shows from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the police all carried revolvers. They didn't carry semi-automatic weapons. And semi-automatic weapons are really weapons of war. They aren't designed for sports shooting. They aren't designed for hunting. They're weapons of war, whether they're pistols or whether they're rifles. And we saw this with this shooting that just happened recently. Excuse me, I just sneezed. This shooting that we just saw in Thousand Oaks, California. The guy was carrying a handgun, a semi-automatic handgun, with apparently a 30-round clip, and maybe more than one clip. And I'm saying we didn't ban automatic weapons. You can still own a fully automatic Uzi. You just have to pay a $200 fee. You have to submit your fingerprints. You have to go through an extremely intrusive background check. And I mean, but it's there. I mean, there's a mechanism to, so if somebody says, well, I have to have my semi-automatic weapon. Okay, cool. Just let's regulate semi-automatic weapons the same way we do automatic weapons. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's a great idea. That's something I write about in my book. And when was the last time you heard of somebody using a fully automatic machine gun to commit a crime? Almost never, because, as you point out, those guns are very well regulated, and it only underscores the argument that regulation actually works. That if you put barriers between people who are able to obtain a firearm, you reduce gun deaths of all kinds, starting, of course, with suicides, which is, as you know, is 2/3 of the gun deaths in America. Yeah,
absolutely. So, Igor, where do we go now? What are you doing? Your organization, we need fewerguns.org, gunsdownamerica.org.
Well, we need fewerguns.org is the petition that we're driving because, we had an election last week, as everybody knows. But our work, as far as I'm concerned, is really just beginning, because now is the time, as you have the NRA losing power, losing its political clout. They have a lot less money coming in from membership dues. They're far less influential than they've ever been. Tons of companies have broken from the NRA. That as that's happening, and as you have young people coming into really grassroots politics through this issue, right? They've spent their childhoods under their desks because of these drills that they've had to go through. They now see the consequences and the reasons for these drills. They're fired up. They're ready to go. So now is the time, I think, to really push our members of Congress to go further, to go bolder, and to pursue the kinds of policies that you and I have discussed that reduce the number of guns in circulation, that make those guns harder to get. And really, step one, I think, is educating Americans about what needs to be done. And, you point out, and I think this point is critical, is that it's no great mystery about what we need to do to reduce gun violence. States that have adopted gun licensing, and there's 10 states that have gun licensing now, have seen dramatic drops in gun deaths. But, of course, also countries around the world that have licensing and other mechanisms that erect great barriers for gun ownership have also been successful. So we know what to do. We've got to get the lawmakers there.
Amen. The websites, check them out, gunsdownamerica.org, the parent organization We Need Fewer Guns.org for the petition. Igor Volsky, the founder and executive director of Guns Down America. Keep up the great work, Igor. It's great having you on the program.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Great talking.